For those who don't already know, 2 weeks ago, you sent out a letter to Stamped customers to tell them that change was coming and that Stamped is essentially going to be rebuilt from the ground up. And this week, we also launched a waitlist where merchants can sign up to participate in a demo for the new Stamped. How would you say overall the response has been so far to everything?
Yeah, it's been good. Just to kind of like pull that, peel that back a little bit. The reality is that what we sent was pretty transparent, pretty honest about some of the struggles that we've had. I think stamped. If you've never built software before, one of the underrated aspects of building software is that uh, if you're not improving it, it's actually just like slowly dying. Like every this idea of entropy, like everything moves towards entropy. Like that is software. Like everything just slowly dies if you don't fix it, and if you're not proactive about that. And it gets worse as you scale and as more people use it. And so I think that's what like I think you could summarize part of Stamp's problems as being that like it's a very challenging thing to take a piece of software that's growing very quickly and at the same time optimize it so that it's future proofed. And so ultimately, like that just didn't really happen the way that it could have. And I don't even think that that's like anybody's fault necessarily. It is a very hard thing to do. And so ultimately, you get to a point where you've got this massive scale, you've got these problems that are really hard to solve, and they're compounded. The difficulty of solving those is compounded by the fact that there's just so many people using it. And so that's ultimately kind of the source of a lot of the struggles we've had. And so the Stamped team has been working on that for years, and that's like a you don't see that from the outside. You don't see that when there's things that don't seem to be working the way that you want them to. But ultimately, like the team has been working on this stuff for a long time, and we're getting close to the point where like a lot of the stuff that just didn't work very well is going to be able to go away. The nice thing is like it's Stamp has never been in a position where it's like everything just doesn't work. Um, there's pieces here and there. There's segments of customers that have had really big problems with things that are just hard for us to solve. And so I think the good news here is that we're actually really close to getting to the point where things are going to be in a much better space. And so yeah, I just wanted to send something out to our customer base that said, "Hey, I don't think that anybody's ever told you why things are the way they are. And so we want to do that and just be honest about that. And also just be honest about the fact that, like, hey, we still have some time to go, but here's what we're working on, here's what we're working towards, and we've got more information coming." And so that's going to be kind of a regular cadence from our leadership team as we are moving through this, just really trying to help our customers understand, like, what is it that we're actually dealing with here.
And I think the response so far, a lot of people have been appreciating that transparency. Like, I know that you've gotten a lot of responses from people about this so far. Like, overall, what would you say the general reaction has been?
Yeah, I'd say positive. It's interesting because a lot of the overall positive, the people who have had the biggest problems are often the ones to respond. And I think the challenge is that with what we're facing, it's going to take some time to get to the point where I can actually sit here and confidently say, like, hey, this is going to be an amazing experience for you. Like we're not like this is not going to be an overnight thing in terms of like taking where we've been and where we're going and getting everybody to that. And so I think that then requires kind of an additional layer of transparency with some folks to say, like, hey, this maybe isn't good enough, and we understand and we respect that, and like you do what you got to do in this context. Um, and we're here to support you. And that's just kind of the approach that we have to take. So, yeah, response has been really good overall. But I think for that cohort of people in particular, um, it just means that we kind of dive in a little bit more and try to give even a little bit more transparency to those folks.
So you talked a bit about why the timing works right now for Stamped and why it makes sense. But can you talk a little bit about like the general like e-commerce landscape with how reviews are operating? I think there is a lot of distrust in reviews and how effective they are as of
Yep.
recent. Why do you think right now, in terms of the bigger picture, this also makes sense for Stamped to be making these changes?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. If you think about like you spend your dollars where you think there's value. And so in reviews, like when I started in this space, it was normal to spend like I had a brand that was doing probably $3,000 to $5,000 a month of sales. Like it was brand new. And we expected to grow, but like getting into this reviews provider at like their lowest tier was $300 a month. And which feels absolutely absurd now. Like the idea that you'd be paying $300 a month for a brand that's doing, call it 50K in annual GMV is just like, that's absurd. But 10, 12, 15 years ago, whenever that was, I don't even remember. That was kind of a normal thing. And it's because everybody was like, I need reviews. We're trying to get reviews into Google for syndication there so we could actually run ads. And there's all kinds of stuff. And it was just like, it was harder to do it then. And the perceived value of reviews was very high. The only thing you really cared about was collecting them, showing them, and distributing them. Like that was the only thing that really mattered. And so that was kind of the environment in which Stamped came up, Yapo, Okendo, like all of the players that you kind of think of today sort of came up in that environment. And really, they were the competitor against that mindset, right? And so what they were solving for was very much the we're trying to give people the thing that they want, but for probably less money or maybe in a slightly different way or whatever that is. And so and to be clear, what I'm saying here is going to be like slightly unfair to these people that have been doing this for a long time. So I don't, I don't mean it to be that way. I'm just trying to make a point here. And so in this context, we have, a bunch of platforms that are kind of like still anchored towards the problems of 10, 15 years ago, in my opinion, Stamped included. And so what's really interesting to me is to kind of look at things and say, okay, what if we reset and we re-anchor towards 2025 and not even 2025, but what we think is coming a little bit. When you look at how merchants are spending their money and you look at the growth of Judge Me and the like relative decline basically of the value of reviews among other reviews software providers, you can see that like merchants don't value reviews as they exist today and as they are in terms of being anchored to the way that we did e-commerce 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I think there's a massive opportunity here. And that's ultimately what we're pushing into is like, how do we recapture that value, experience of value? And how do we help merchants to really feel like this is something that's valuable and moving their business forward, as opposed to just like being this thing where you passively collect reviews and show them on your website?